we invite you to check out our website. I think we can pop it into the chat. There you will find a free starter kit for meditation practice, as well as lots of other information, including announcements of classes, retreats, and other things that are on offer. We also now have a YouTube channel where you can find recordings of the daily sit, such as this one, as well as yoga sessions, Torah study, and more. So we hope that you'll check that out as well. Before we start, I want to let you know about just one upcoming program. Beginning this Passover, the IJS faculty, including myself, will be offering a 7-week mindfulness practice to promote healing, growth, and liberation that we also desperately need right now. Journeying through the Omer, this period between Passover and Shavuot, we will immerse each week in one of 7 sacred qualities which are drawn from Kabbalah. The course starts on April 16th during Passover and has an orientation on April 9th to just help us get ready to roll. And you can learn more and register in the link that will be in the chat shortly. I'll also just underscore that our ability to host this sit each day and to run so much of our programming depends upon the generosity of our supporters. And if you're in a position to do so, we hope that you will consider making a contribution to support our work and to bring Jewish mindfulness practice to others as well. If you're in a position to support us with a gift of $180, you can sponsor the daily sit in honor of someone or in memory of someone. And we are grateful for your support in whatever form it takes, whether that's financial contribution or presence, equally valued and needed in order to make this community what it is. So with that, we're going to begin our sit. Our sit today will be led by Rabbi Jenny Solomon, who is the rabbi of Beth Meyer Synagogue in Raleigh, North Carolina, as well as a member of the board of the Institute for Jewish Spirituality. And she reports that she feels privileged to be a regular guest presenter at the Daily Sit. I'll also just extend that to say that though we've only barely met each other a few times in Zoom rooms, Jenny exceeds a sort of warmth that immediately makes me feel just comfortable and glad to be in space with her. I hope that you'll share that feeling, and I hope you'll join me in welcoming her today as she leads us in the sit. She will first be guiding us through some teaching and wisdom. She'll then lead us into our meditation. We'll ensure that everyone is muted and that the chat is disabled so that we are non-distracted while we're practicing. And we'll end the formal sit just before the hour. We'll have an opportunity to recite mourner's Kaddish for those who are in mourning and wish to say Kaddish in community. And then we will formally end the sit and stay on for a little bit of Q&A for those who want to be in conversation with Jenny and I. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to you, Jenny. Thanks for being here.
Thank you so much, Kashira. The feelings are totally mutual. It's truly an honor to sit with you and with our amazing, beautiful chevra. And thank you, Rachel, for making this so easy and all possible with your technological wisdom. I do feel so privileged and grateful always for the chance to sit in community, just to breathe and rest and heal and be. So thank you, everyone, for your presence and your participation. So we're going to begin sitting. And as always, your eyes can be open or closed or anywhere in between. And you may just want to take a moment to move just naturally or organically. Sometimes some gentle swaying or stretching in your seat. Just a bit of gentle movement, which will allow you to create a little bit more space for your breath in your body as we create some stillness together. So when you feel called to slow down the motion, sense your belonging to the earth beneath you, rooted, grounded, centered. And take some deep cleansing breaths as a way of claiming and reclaiming this body, this belonging, this space, this moment. Just some big inhales through the nose and exhales through the mouth. And you may want to find a sort of natural and steady pattern to your breath, nothing forced or too contrived, but just a supple pattern, perhaps a pattern in which you even out your breath, allowing your inhalation to be approximately the same length as your exhalation. Not too loose, not too tight. Just feeling yourself breathing. Let's take 3 more cycles, full cycles of breath together. And I invite you to place one hand gently on your heart to thank yourself for showing up to your practice. And bring your other hand to your heart as a gesture of appreciation for one another. A reminder that none of us are alone on this journey. Let's just bear witness to our capacity to be present here. It's not always pleasant to be in the present. So however you're showing up to this moment, just allow yourself to be exactly as you are. Feel free to open your eyes if you close them. I'm going to offer a little bit of Torah as a framing for our longer period of sitting. This week's Torah portion takes us to the end of the book of Exodus. And in addition to Aaron and the priests being given their clothing for work in the sanctuary, their sacred uniform, this parsha marks the completion of the tabernacle's construction, the Mishkan. And Moses anoints Aaron and his sons to make their priestly positions official. And a cloud descends on the Mishkan, and God's presence, the Shekhinah, fills that Mishkan. And many scholars point to the fact that in a literary way, this finale is actually kind of patterned after the creation narrative in Breshit, in Genesis, in which the completion of the work evoked divine approval, followed by a blessing. So with Rachel's help, we're going to take a look at a verse which sort of encapsulates this narrative. So the verse from Exodus 39, it says, Kechol asher tziva Hashem et Moshe, ken asu b'nei Yisrael, et kol ha'avodah. Vayar Moshe et kol ha'melacha, v'hine asu ota, ka'asher tziva Hashem, ken asu Vayivarech otam Moshe. So just as God commanded Moses, so the Israelites had done all the work. And when Moses saw that they had performed all the tasks, just as God had commanded, so they had done, Moses blessed them. And again, this might remind you of the verses in the 2nd chapter of Genesis. You might sort of hear that as an echo. On the 7th day, God finished the work that had been undertaken. God ceased doing the work on the 7th day, and then God blessed the 7th day and declared it holy. But in this case, of course, it's not God doing the work, it's us. This entire project is presented as an enterprise of Kol B'nai Yisrael, all of us. And then what is this blessing that God bestows upon Moses bestows upon the people. We don't know. But of course, Rashi ventures a guess. And so that's sort of the next text that's here. And so Rashi draws from the Midrash when imagining what it is that Moses blessed them with the words, Yehi Ratzon, Shetishrei Shechina b'maaseh yedechem, Vayhi Noam Hashem Eloheinu Aleinu. May it be God's will that the Shechina, the divine presence, rest upon the work of your hands, and may God's pleasantness, kindness, beauty, Noam, rest upon us. So I just love this blessing. I think it's so beautiful that as we complete a task, a sacred task, we simply pray that God's presence rests gently on our work and upon us. And Rachel, you can take the text down now. Thank you so much. I'm just thinking about for all of us who have completed a task recently, whether it's a work of necessity or a work of beauty, that, I don't know about you, but when I complete something, I usually have like a brief moment of satisfaction, followed quickly by a sense that there's so much more to do. If not on that particular project, on something else that's awaiting. And my gratitude for completion often gives way to anxiety over all that still remains. And one of the antidotes to this is, of course, Shabbat. So when we light candles on Friday night, our tradition invites us to say, whatever I did or didn't do, it was enough. Whatever remains can wait 25 hours. And of course, often we liken our Shabbat practice to our meditation practice. When we sit and begin meditation, we shift into Shabbat mind, focusing on our being rather than our doing. And so while we may not light candles for meditation, although it's a beautiful practice, perhaps we can just close our eyes, just as we do when we light candles for Shabbat, and say to ourselves as we begin to sit, whatever I did or didn't do leading up to this moment, it was enough, and whatever remains can wait. And it reminds me a little bit of the teaching from Pirkei Avot, very famous teaching from Rabbi Tarfon. I'll focus just on the beginning of this teaching. Lo alecha hamlecha ligmor. It's not upon you, at least not you as an individual in this moment, to finish the work. So as we prepare to sit together again, this time a bit longer, I invite you to give yourself permission to feel a sense of completion around whatever came before this, something you've been working on, whatever remains in the day ahead, the week ahead, the year ahead, it can wait. And as we respond to this invitation for some kind of like momentary version of completion, I also invite us to invoke Moshe's blessing. May it be your will that the Shekhinah herself rest upon the work of our hands and upon us. So I invite you to find your seat once again. Your eyes can be open or closed or anywhere in between. And just take a nice full breath in and a full breath out. And I invite you to scan your body for any places that are holding on to tension or tightness, worry or distress or anguish. And just invite in some soft and gentle acceptance wherever you can. Notice if any part of you is bracing for impact, and see if you can bring a quality of settling. And as you sit and breathe, I invite us to imagine that we're lighting Shabbat candles. allowing ourselves to make peace with what we have completed and what still remains. This time is dedicated to resting in our being and allowing God's presence, the Shekhinah, to dwell here with us. So as we continue to sit, there's nothing to do, there's nothing to fix, nothing to finish, just to be here. We'll continue in silence, and I'll bring us together with the sound of my voice. A Psalm of Endings and Beginnings by Debbie Pearlman. May she rest in peace. Let us sing of our completions, smooth, round, silvered voices to praise your name. Every season holds starts and stops, years of trees and spirits and souls, days ripe with harmony and turning, circled, cycled to order our lives. Inside each completion, we hear your creation. Inside our creations, we resound with your voice. Let us mold a new shape for our completions, fluid and longing, subtle limbs that lead us onward to praise your name. Every season casts away its jagged edges, rubs away the torn moments, to rejoice in the realignment of old ways made straight. Inside each refitting, we renew again your creation, pulling it taut against us, a firm bound shield of your affection. Let us sing of our completions. Your hand hovers, blesses, bids us move to new beginnings. Your hand moves us forward toward unimagined completions. So begin to deepen your breath. And I invite you to allow your hands to rest on your lap or to cradle them one inside the other. And into our hands, we invite God's blessing. Bless the work of our hands. Remain with us in the hours and days ahead. Be with us in our endings and beginnings. Allow us to find peace with what we have completed and peace with what remains. Adonai oz le'amo yitain, Adonai yivarech et amav b'shalom. God, give us strength and bless us with peace. I turn it back to Kohenet Kashira for Kaddish Yatom.
Amen. Amen. Thank you so much, Rabbi Jenny. I already have questions and reflections, which I'll hold until after we have the opportunity to say Kaddish. For those who are in mourning, this is a traditional way of honoring the memories of those who are beloved. And we'll offer prayer and praise on their behalf. If you are remembering someone this morning and would like to put their name in the chat, please feel welcome to do that. And if you'd like to unmute so that your voice can be part of our communal Kaddish, we invite that. If it's your practice and you're able to rise, please feel welcome, knowing also that it's perfectly fine to be in whatever body posture brings you to presence. Yitz Gadal, Yitz
Shmei Rabba.
Amen. Amen.
Avinu v'Kol Yisrael, Kol Yoshvei Tevel, v'Yimru Amen.
Amen. May the one who makes peace bring peace. peace and comfort to all who are in mourning. And may the memories of all of those in the chat and in our hearts be for a blessing, as we say.
Amen.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much for guiding us today. I want to just explicitly invite into the chat any reflections or questions folks might have, and I'll do my best to track the chat and to uplift some of those questions. But for now, I want to start with one of my own, which came as you were guiding us and teaching us. I felt a sense of gentleness in the sit, and the image that I had was this idea of the Shekhinah coming to rest upon us. And I'm curious, how do we know when it's happened? Is there a qualitative feeling that you have or an awareness that you might share of just the knowingness of that presence? What does it feel like to have it rest upon us? Or what could it feel like?
That's an amazing question. I mean, the first thing that arises is for me is just this this awareness of actually like just allowing what is already here. And when I remind myself that there's nothing for me to do here, I don't know, that already sort of shifts the possibility that I can become aware of what is actually already here. What about for you?
Well, the feeling that I had, and I'll be honest, I had a feeling of spaciousness. It was kind of like an opening, an expansiveness in my breath that like made more room for holy presence. And I'm paraphrasing, you said something like, there's nothing else to be done. There's nothing that needs to change. There's a part of me that also felt some resistance, which is like, what do you mean? There's so much to be done. There's so much to change. And so I'm also wondering about this kind of generative tension, which is to acknowledge and hold the arising awareness that there's so much to be done, and the discipline or relief or blessing of saying, but not right now, not in this moment. First we rest, and we rest, and how those things interplay.
Yeah, it's like just tapping into the wisdom of 6 days we work and 1 day we rest, and perhaps we can like microdose that, and just the awareness that there is so much to do. There's so much that needs to be fixed. There's so much that needs completing and recreating, and also in moments we can't do that work if we don't stop to rest and be here.
It feels paradoxical, both in that there's so much work to do. It feels like there's no time to rest. And I would argue that in today's world, 1 day isn't enough, that actually we need more than just Shabbat in order to counteract the overwhelming amount that is coming at us and changing. And so maybe that feeling of expansiveness or spaciousness when we allow rest is a way of time stretching out to allow for more doing and allow for more not doing.
Yeah, I kind of just imagine, I created this whole like imagination of this verse where Moses blesses the people. And I can just imagine myself being one of Bnei Israel being like, yeah, we finished it. Let's go. And Moses is saying like, no, like stop here. Let's just behold what has been created. And I found myself in some meetings recently that were moving slowly in a very intentional way. And again, I could feel my own sense of like, we have all these things to accomplish. And my reflection in looking back was, for the wise people who led those meetings and created space for reflection, for being, for blessing the work, is that it was so much more, not only was it so much more meaningful, it was actually more productive. Just like,
Right.
I don't know if it was more productive or I was able to perceive that it was more productive, but it's really shifting the way I think about how quickly I move
Yes, I can relate to that a lot. I have an inherent um, drive towards moving on. And I was moved the first time I learned about, in the context of sablanut, of forbearance and patience, that impatience comes from when things are going too slow or when things are going too fast. That allowing ourselves to find just the right pace to integrate, to move, to do, to not do, qualitatively changes our experience of
Yeah,
life. We are all deserving of that.
that makes so
The
much sense.
chat is getting a bit active. I'm going to turn to a couple of questions here. Our dear Laura asks a question. The suggestion, quote, let go of bracing for impact was transformative, she writes. Any thoughts on how to integrate that into one's daily life? Beautiful question. Thanks, Laura.
Yeah. Well, as somebody who's had a long journey of sort of somatizing that, feeling that in my body with all kinds of, I used to get migraines. Thank God I don't get them anymore. But I think that practice has really been my way of just reminding myself. So when I feel tightness, and that can show up in all different places in my body's the best guide, then I can just repeat that phrase and soften.
Yes. And soften. I think that's really key, particularly in a time when the instinct to protect ourselves can often mean hardening. And I think about the way that when I'm braced, nothing is flowing, including my breath. I mean, if I even say, like brace yourself, there's a way in which that can, like that constriction even interrupts the natural flow of breath, which in a microcosm is a way of interrupting the flow of life. It's a micro movement of resistance to the natural unfolding, into the cosmic unfolding of things, which ideally we want to participate in and be instruments of. So I think reminder and this question of how do we do this every day, to remind ourselves to just flow with what is it's a powerful inquiry.
It is. The image that's coming up for me is like, I love being in the ocean. And, when the waves come, I'm both frightened and excited. And, if you try when a wave comes in to just like sort of stand your ground, it just doesn't work. But if you look at the wave and you sort of decide to flow with it, you can decide, am I going to pick up my feet? Am I going to swim under? Am I going to just soften in such a way that, again, just as you said, like I can be with this rather than braced against it.
It's such a great metaphor. It made me think about, when I was less experienced in being hit by the waves, it would kind of hit me in the face. And then I would do this, like, duh, how could you do that? Right. And here's me kind of yelling at the whole ocean. But what I learned quickly is just to laugh at myself trying to stand my ground in the face of something so much greater than me. And if I don't experience that every day, I haven't been truly living. At least once a day, I have to notice myself. Where am I being insistent about things that are just way, way beyond me?
Totally, totally.
Oh, let me just peruse the chat here. Again, there's lots of comments. Thank you to everyone who is commenting and interacting here. Someone is asking if you can repeat the phrase that helps in interrupting this idea of bracing. What did you say? Do you remember?
I'm not sure exactly what the phrase was, but soften or allow. Those are sort of things that I think about.
Beautiful. If we can soften and allow. Better yet, if we can soften and allow.
Yeah.
Even better. Deborah's asking this question, and I'm not exactly sure what it relates to, but it's a good question. So let's see if we can relate it. How come some people wait longer to do Havdalah on Saturday night? That people might be stretching out Shabbat. And I'm wondering if you have thoughts on this practice of waiting for those 3 stars to come out.
That's such a great idea. I mean, the first thing that comes to mind is it's a wonderful practice of just not rushing. And there too, like Havdalah is such a, I mean, I usually think about it as just the ultimate transition ritual, helping us ease our anxiety about moving into the week by bringing with us the fruits and the gifts of Shabbat. But it is also a way of, by extending that and not sort of rushing into that ritual, it's not necessarily an avoidance of entering the week, but sort of starting from the very beginning of the week, of setting our intention for being less rushed in the things that matter. So I never really thought about it that way. I appreciate the question and the comment, the insight.
I love the idea that if we take our time with Havdalah, that we're beginning the week in a way that's less rushed, giving ritual and song its time, and just allowing that sweetness to set the blueprint for the week.
Mm-hmm.
I want to pick up just an acknowledgement of a comment in the chat. Roberta writes, as a trauma survivor, I have been, as you say, bracing for impact my whole life. Lately, I've realized that it hasn't worked for me. At 67, I feel more able to grow and be more productive and satisfied with my life. I now have a great way of thinking of it. Quote, let go of bracing for impact. Soften and allowing is working much better. Thank you for this gift. And I'm uplifting this not only to celebrate and send some gentleness and care to Roberta, but also just to acknowledge that we talk about these things. They sound obvious when we say them, that softening is better than bracing. And yet, for so many of us in our lived experience, it can be really hard work to let go of that sense of needing to brace, of the feeling that we are in danger. I've been recently thinking about and really exploring the distinction between being afraid and being in danger. And that sometimes my system tells me I'm in danger, but it's not in danger. It's afraid, or it's thinking about something. And that really, through the practice of mindfulness and coming to presence in the moment, we can gently untie the knot. It's not as simple as just correcting our thinking.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. And Roberta, I also, I hear in what you're sharing here that like there is some incredible wisdom and adaptiveness of our bodies that we're wired for to protect ourselves. So like that bracing for impact, that impulse is certainly not bad. It's in some ways it's kind of hardwired, especially if you think about from where we have evolved and the natural threats that would inevitably be present. Reaching moments in our lives where we can notice how that impulse may not be serving us best, and adapt to something that is more helpful and skillful is really one of the gifts of this practice for me. And I also I think we all do, like, shift into these very habitual ways, either because they've worked, or we've thought that they've worked, or they've just become habit, or we're wired for that. And then in the practice, just remembering, just coming back to perhaps a different way of being.
It's profound in its simplicity. Kohenet Joe Kent Katz teaches that all of the kind of maladaptive strategies that we have were once survival tactics, that the people who came before us needed those things in order to survive, and that we have the opportunity to interrupt them and remember we're not in that moment now, that we don't necessarily need to employ those things now, and to be compassionate with ourselves in the moments that we fall into those patterns. They didn't come from nowhere. We come by them honestly. And so just bringing some tenderness to ourselves in those moments when we find that we're bracing. There's that old exercise of when you hold a fist, if you try to open the fist through force of your fingers, it's a different experience than if you cradle the fist gently and allow for the fingers to open. So to just bring that gentle holding. I want to bring Lori's comment, which is curious and exciting to me. She writes, this practice today reminds me of an article I read recently, that taking a break and closing our eyes, or being in silence, or taking a walk helps us to memorize or remember something we just studied or learned. And so it sounds like someone is making some scientific evidence of what we might know intrinsically, which is that when we allow space and spaciousness, the things that we're learning or practicing integrate more deeply. And today was a wonderful example of that, even just taking this brief time to contemplate, what would I need to do to make space for the Shekhinah to come and rest upon me? What do I need to let go? What do I need to keep doing? It's a really beautiful practice of just allowing ourselves to be as a way to deepen into our learning practice.
Amen. Amen.
Oh, thank you, Jenny, for such a delightful practice together. Thank you to Rachel for holding the tech piece for us. And if you are on your way now, actually, we're all on our way now. I'm realizing it's 1:15. Thank you to everyone who stayed to be in this conversation with us. And as it turns out, I'll be back tomorrow hosting the sit again. So I'll look forward to practicing with you. We'll be welcoming Rabbi Shirma Irafet, and looking forward to it, and looking forward to when we cross paths again, Jenny. Thanks for being here.
Thank you so much.
Oh,
Bye.
well, everybody, take care.